But good to see you all. As I'm walking around, there's a little bit of a jingle, and I'm quite liking the Christmas buzz and vibe that I think you've got going on here, Debbie. So Santa's sleigh's not coming just yet. It got me very excited earlier on, and it seems to be following me around. But a huge welcome to this session. Thank you, Olivia, for the previous session as well. And it's on a really important topic of data, and I saw a couple of questions coming through around data. And what I'm going to do today is talk about how we can utilise wellbeing data to be able to build and level up our benefit strategy now and in the future as well. And so I'm Harry Bliss, CEO, co-founder of Champion Health, and we're also on stand 6 if there are any questions that you've got off the back of today's conversation. Now, data is everywhere. It's a big topic. It's a big conversation to be having today. So one of the things that we will do is break down something that you can utilise and take forwards in your organisation off the back of what the 120 health experts and academics have worked through at Champion. But before we go on to that, just a quick show of hands if you think the wellbeing space is quite noisy at the moment, quite literally. So a quick show of hands to anyone. That's most of the hands up, if not all of the hands up. And there have never been so many wellbeing providers in the world. Over 500,000 health apps on the App Store, yet wellbeing is worsening. So there's a bit of a disconnect here. And one of the big things I want to talk about is how you can generate the greatest return on investment, not just for your people, but for the business as well today. So we've got a Champion pair of branded noise-cancelling headphones that you can take away from today's session. We're going to move away from being what we can sell to you to what you can actually use to be able to generate the data-driven decisions that you need in your organisations going forwards. So I've got the challenge of squeezing what could be a PhD, it could be a huge master's project, into 15 minutes within here. And I'm excited to talk to you on all of these 3 topics. So there are 3 aims that we've got and 1 objective. The first aim is to go through the human side behind the data. I'm going to share with you my personal story that I know a few of you and the familiar faces that I know in the room are aware of, but I want to share that with you because behind any piece of data is a human being. The second area is then how we can level up, off the back of data, our EVP, the thing that you're really here for, that you can take away and you can utilise going forwards. And the third and final area is off the back of over 1 million data points that Champion Health have collected. We believe data needs to be used for good. We're going to share with you those insights of 3 key areas in what employees want, in financial well-being, and then also in productivity and presenteeism. So you can go back to your organisation and look to utilise those secondary data resources going forwards. And with the main aim of having impact as well. That's really the main aim within here. But I'm going to set you a quick challenge before we really kick off on today's session. And I want us to have unconventional thinking. A lot of conventional thinking at the moment goes round. We hear stuff around data, buzzwords. But I want to challenge some norms today. And my challenge for you is to critique the session that I'm doing. But not only that, critique what you're doing within your organisations when it comes to the data. What can you be doing better? How could you apply some of these elements? And how can you apply it to your context? That's the most important thing within here. So hopefully I'm going to challenge some of the thinking at the moment from what's out there in the research. So the first area is the human side behind the data. And this is a really important area that data often, especially quantitative data that we'll go through, can be quite cold, it can be quite hard, and it sometimes can be lacking a bit of emotion when we're there with the big spreadsheets, we've got all of our analytics reported in front of us. But what I want to do is go through the human side of the data, and this is my why. This is James, who is my friend and my mentor. 5 years ago, when I started Champion Health with the vision of building the Netflix of wellbeing to bring together all areas of wellbeing into one unified place, as well as generating data-driven decisions for organisations, we had a really strong team of academics and health experts. I was really lucky to have them spanning multiple universities, multiple health areas. But at the age of 23, I didn't have a clue how to run a business from the operational side of things. So I did the best trade I will ever do. I traded in my cricket coaching skills for his 2 kids for his business mentorship. And he was the youngest director on the FTSE 100 at the time. Career had gone from strength to strength. And James was someone that was the life and soul of the party. And I'm sure we can connect and resonate with these kinds of people. Now, 4 years ago, and this is why I share with you this story today, 4 years ago last week, James tragically ended up taking his own life. This was 6 months into Champion's journey. and someone that I would not be here today if it wasn't for his help and support. Now, the reason why I've included that within this presentation is behind any data set, behind any data point is a human being. And that's really important for us to be able to understand, to then deliver the action, deliver the insight, and to deliver the interventions going forward. So always revert back when we are looking at those spreadsheets, when we are looking at the analytics and reports, that they're human beings behind any piece of data. So what I want you to do is think about your why when it comes to it within your organisation, how you can apply that with the data that you've got. Now, the second area that I'd love to go through, so you've got practical takeaways from today's session, is how you can use data to level up your employee value proposition. And what I'm not going to go through is that data is really important. We all know that. That's why you're here today. And Captain Obvious I would be if I was to go through that. But what I am going to go through with you is what our team of academics have developed. And when we sat down with them, we said, why are there so many wellbeing providers and why is wellbeing worsening? And what we looked at was a framework that was absolutely critical for the success of any single strategy, whether this is a business strategy, whether this is a well-being or benefit strategy. And what it came down to is something called the 4 R's. So the 4 R's stands for record, report, resolve, and reassess. And so if we miss out one of these areas, if we don't record the right data, collecting the right data initially, if we only collect one specific type of data and we don't get the context behind it, if we don't resolve the issues to the data's meaningless and quite frankly pointless. If we don't reassess, then we stand still and we don't continually evolve within here. So record, report, resolve, reassess. These are the 4 key areas for any data-driven wellbeing strategy to have impact off the back of it. And instead of it being linear, one of the academics came back and said, this needs to be cyclical, this needs to be an ongoing process. Now, if we were to plan our wellbeing strategy 2 years ago, and it was exactly the same as what it is today, it's likely to not be working with the cost of living crisis, with everything that's happened with COVID and the aftermath of that. And so this is a cyclical process that we'll run through one by one, and I'm going to go through each of these individual points in the next few minutes as to what we can do about this to be able to collect meaningful data and then the action and insight off the back of it. So when it comes to the first R of record, how do we collect the data? The first thing that I'd encourage you to do is to collect both qualitative and quantitative data and also be proactive and reactive. You'll hear people standing in my position saying, we need to be proactive, not reactive. I would question that as a proactive wellbeing provider. We need to be proactive and reactive. We can't prevent 100% of cases of poor mental health, for example. There are things that go on in family lives. There are things that go on in society. And as we know with mental health specifically, there are a lot of genetic predispositions within there. So we need to be proactive and reactive. We need to collect both of those types of data. And when it comes to qualitative and quantitative, what we want to do is start broad with the topics. So we might have a specific hypothesis of what areas of well-being do we need to focus on within our organisations and where do we need to invest our time and resource, of which is limited within any company. So start with the quantitative, large sample size of a lot of data, but then what we want to do off the back of that is have a few key assumptions that fit into that hypothesis, and then we can get the qualitative data that provides context behind the numbers. So the numbers alone are great. We could demonstrate that 80% of employees may be experiencing chronic lower back pain. Therefore, there might be a really strong assumption to say we need to invest in X, Y, and Z. Without the qualitative analysis, that's where we can get the rich insight into why is that the case? How important is X, Y, and Z intervention within here? And the final thing that I was speaking to a leader of a blue chip organisation is not to shy away from the tough topics. They said to me, and this has stuck with me for the last few years, if you ask mundane questions, if you look for mundane data, that's what you'll get back. And so if we can start to ask the tricky questions, the questions that really mean something to employees, that's when we're going to get really rich insight within there. So we've collected the data, we've got the pool of data, then it's around reporting it. And so triangulation is a really important thing within here, whereby we can combine data sets, whether it's absence data, staff turnover with proactive well-being, for example. And so that's the first area, and we also want to look to cross-correlate. What I mean by cross-correlating is we often look at the outcome and the lag indicators before the lead indicators. So we often look at mental health absence or mental health outcomes without actually looking at what are the things that are attributing to that mental health disorder, challenge, absence, for example. And so it might be insomnia, it might be work-related stress, and so if we can look to cross-correlate that, we can make some really strong assumptions going forwards. Another thing is to bring together the expertise. And if I'm to make one prediction for 2023, is that data analytics is going to play a huge role in benefits and wellbeing strategies. You'll have these experts within your organization, look to try and bring them into the conversation to create a really strong stakeholder group to building that strong strategy. And the final area is then analyze the secondary data sources where possible. So it might be on Google Scholar with peer-reviewed articles that you might want to look at. It might be the likes of Champion Health report or TikTok report, for example, on wellbeing strategies. Look at what the general data is saying and draw comparisons, and then you've got a really strong report of the qualitative and quantitative data to take to the board, take to senior leaders, and to make strong interventions off the back of. And so that's what leads me on to resolve. And there's a phrase that a world-leading marketer used that stuck with me ever since, of look to fire bullets before firing the cannon. And now what we can do very easily is say, this is the intervention to solve that problem. We fired the cannon there, we've gone all out, all guns blazing, and there's no going back. What we would strongly recommend is to do small pilots, small trials of things, to be able to test, measure, and learn within there. And that way you're going to have a really strong intervention if you can learn from what you've done well and the mistakes that you may have made within there. And that will then go back to the efficacy and the reassess, which I'll go through shortly. The other thing is to move fast on the data. Within this room, we've got a lot of senior leaders that have hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employees. And it is a challenge to move quickly on the data. But as Gethin Naden said, a friend of mine who's often here, I don't think he is here today, nothing engages employees more than asking them what they want, but nothing disengages them more than not acting on it quickly. And so if we can move fast on the data that we get and the data and insight within there, we only need 51% hypothetically of data to be able to make a stronger assumption and move forwards, then that's the way that we'll continually evolve as well. And then the final area, and this is really under the microscope at the moment in terms of the wellbeing space and where investment's being made, look to integrate the human needs with the business needs. That middle section of the Venn diagram, the more we can target interventions in that midsection, the more powerful that will be going forwards. And then finally, without the reassess, we don't know the success of it. We don't necessarily know how effective the strategies have been. So look to reassess every 3 to 6 months if possible. Many audits are done every 12 to 24 months. If we can move that forwards, continually evaluate, test, measure, and learn, that is really effective. And the final area that one of the academics recommended to me, and it's so easy to do within research and evaluation processes, is to look to leave the ego behind. If we think that something's going to be really effective and actually we find that it's not, that's okay, as long as we're able to, again, find that out very quickly within here. So an example of this in action was with an organisation of around 500 employees that we've worked with, and they said, we've got loads of services in place, they're not getting the engagement, absence is quite high, staff turnover is quite high, got quite a disengaged workforce. And so what they said is, we need to collect some data in being able to understand the core areas of where we need to focus. And so we conducted a 15-minute wellbeing assessment with them covering all areas of wellbeing. That then drew down into a report within there, and then we conducted the qualitative analysis as to why some specific constructs were occurring. And the main thing was around work-related stress within. And so you've got the record, you've then got the report that is produced to senior leaders that ties in with the human and the business needs. Then you've got the resolve, and that is really tailored around those two areas. So there are training courses that we put those individuals on, and there was coaching that we also provided to the senior leadership group and team. And then when it came to the reassess point, we reduced chronic stress by 68% throughout that organisation, as well as demonstrating productivity improvements. So that's all from just that 4-step process within. And what they didn't do, and this is what they did really well, was they continued to reassess and reevaluate going forwards, because how quickly is the world moving? So just to go back through that very quickly, record, report, resolve, reassess, the 4-step process that world-leading academics have devised at Champion Health for you to take away today. But there are 3 key insights that I wanted to leave you with today when it comes to building your EVP into 2023. And these are produced off the back of our flagship reports, the Workplace Health Report, the Global Productivity Report, and the Cost of Living Crisis Report that the Champion Health team from over 1 million data points have produced. So the first area that we're looking at from the Workplace Health Report is what employees need. Now, if we can tailor our interventions, our resources, our communications around what employees need and want, we are so much more likely to have success in engagement and in changing behaviours for good. And so the first area that I wanted to touch upon was, what is it that employees want to change? A lot of people assume it's mental health, and we're going to run in that direction. Again, what we need to do is collect the data within. And what it's showing is that energy levels are the main thing that employees want to change. And just hold that for a second when I take you through to productivity and presenteeism. And mental health is 5th down the list. Now, if we improve tiredness or reduce tiredness, what that will then do, improve mental health and all of these other areas. So what we may want to do in terms of the resources, the comms, the interventions, is target interventions around those energy levels and how we can boost those going forwards. The other stat that I want to share with you when it comes to what employees want is whether they want to make changes. Is well-being something that is a business priority? And 94% of people said yes, it is. And so it is something that employees want. It's just how we tailor it to them that is absolutely critical from the data. The second area is around financial well-being, huge topic within every organisation at the moment, and rightly so. And financial pressure has now overtaken relationships, which was the main cause of stress outside of work. Financial pressure is now number 1. As you can see here, financial pressure is 34% of employees globally, off the back of the 1 million data points. Relationships number 2, and parenting number 3. So if we can look to, again, collect that data, understand the data, and what can we do about financial pressure? How can we really look to promote the existing interventions that we've got in place and tailor things around certain demographics? So in terms of that demographic data, female employees are 33% more likely to experience financial stress and pressure than male employees. And when we're looking at age demographics, you're twice as likely, if you're a younger employee, if you're between the age of 18 to 29, to experience financial stress than if you're 40 or over. So some really interesting data here that hopefully you can take away to build your EVP. And the final area that I'm going to touch upon is the business needs. We talked about the human needs and the employee needs and what they want to change. But then what is the business needs? What are the health issues impacting productivity from that proactive angle? And what it is tiredness is the main one, and it streets above the other areas. It's almost twice as likely that employees are reporting tiredness as the main cause of, or main health issue that's causing a loss of productivity, than high stress, than poor mental health, and headaches and inactivity. So again, where we want to do is meet the human needs with the business needs. If we can plan interventions around those core areas, we're going to have a lot of success within our wellbeing strategies going forwards. And the final area that I wanted to share with you, and the Deloitte report was mentioned previously from one of Olivia's colleagues, and that was a fantastic piece of research, but that was on mental health alone purely. And whilst mental health, you know my personal story, is so important to focus on, there are so many other areas of well-being, whether it's men's health, women's health, financial well-being through to sleep and insomnia, for example. And what we collated and collected from the 1 million data points is that poor well-being is costing, on an individual basis, to organisations over £9,000 per annum. And this is from presenteeism, this is from absenteeism and staff turnover and all of those areas. And it makes complete sense within here. But when we're able to quantify it off the back of data, that's really powerful for us to use to be able to get board level buy-in and to be able to make sure that we do protect either budgets or resources and interventions going forwards. So I'd like to just repeat that and recap a few areas. And my main aim today was for you to take away one thing. So if it's one of these 8 things, I'll be absolutely delighted off the back of the last 15 minutes. So when it comes to collecting data, use the 4 R's within here: record, report, resolve, reassess, off the back of what the academics recommend. Ensure it's a continuous loop, not a linear line. It's really easy to say, here's the endpoint, and now we're going to move on. Ensure that it's that continuous loop to be able to continue to re-evaluate. Ensure you mix quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data, sorry, if you're taking a photo, I'll tilt down, you don't want my face in it. The quantitative data is amazing for getting large sample size, to be able to cross-correlate, to do all of the analytics, but then we need the context behind it, the emotion behind it that we can, again, draw from the qualitative. And whether that's through focus groups or semi-structured interviews, you don't need the sample size that you do for quantitative, but it's really powerful within. Look to utilise proactive and reactive data. Look to use your claims data, your EAP data, your absence data, and combine that and triangulate that with the proactive data that you can gather from either providers or you can gather yourself. The fifth element is move fast on the data. I know it's extremely tricky within larger organizations, but if we can get the green light from the team and from the senior leadership that we can move fast on this data, we don't need 100% of the data to go. We need around 51%, and that's something that's really coming into the space. And gut feel is a data point. It's from millions of data points and experiences that you will have found and faced as well. The sixth area is, especially at the moment, well-being is under the microscope when it comes to that return on investment, and we need to match business needs with employee needs. If we can have interventions that can do both and can evidence both, that's where it's going to be really powerful going forwards. The seventh and penultimate area is to continually evaluate that process. And finally, the one area that I'd love to leave you with is behind the data, there's always a human being. So I'd love to chat. There's some amazing people that I already know within this room, and I'm sure there's some amazing people I've not got to know, but it's been great to get to know you over the last 20 minutes. I've been Harry Bliss, and yeah, I'd love to chat going forwards. Thank you.